Hey y'all, I'm Alexandria, and this is an Uncaged Life, where I share real life, real faith, and how God fully redeemed it all. So, in order to really understand the deep work that God did inside of me, I feel like it's important that we start back at the beginning. So, let's go back to the beginning, to when I just got here. So, I was born in San Antonio, Texas, to my parents. And in fact, I was born on a Sunday in the middle of a storm. So, I always say, the world wasn't quite ready for me yet, which is why there was a huge storm when I was born. Nothing too eventful outside of that, though. Healthy baby girl. My mom said she was constantly sick with me when she was pregnant with me, and believe me, I got it back tenfold because every single one of my pregnancies to date, I've been sick. Maybe not as sick as her, but definitely ill. Um, my family unit at that time consisted of my dad, my mom, who are both military, and then I had a brother who was 1 year younger than me and another brother who was 3 years younger than me. I don't have a lot of memories of Texas because we didn't live there that long. I only lived there till I was 5. But I do feel like it rubbed off on me. I love big hair. I love guns. And while I was there, I was in a bilingual school where it taught some Spanish. So my pronunciation of Spanish words is amazing. I may not understand as much Spanish as I would like, but I can make it sound amazing. So something works there. And I have a couple memories of like flash flooding one time and then like us talking to trick or treaters out the window another time. I have no idea why we were supposed to be in the bed and my mom was like, go to sleep. But that's really it. I don't have a lot of memories during that time just because I was so young. My really early memories, a lot of them come from California. So when I was about 5 years old, we all moved to California. And really, my first early memories there are basically what had my parents divorce. We were in a car on our way to get onto the base there at Travis. And so we were living in Fairfield or right outside of there. And my mom and my dad, they were fighting, screaming, fighting each other in the car. Me and my brothers are all in the back seat. I'm screaming and crying. My brothers are screaming and crying. And eventually we stop because they're checking people through the gate. My mom hops out of the car. I hop out of the car with my mom, but my brothers are still buckled. And I do think that there's a spiritual element to that. The fact that they didn't get out and I did get out with my mom. And you'll find out kind of how a little bit of how that turned out when we were older as time goes on. But I did hop out with my mom. And eventually, from that whole ordeal, my dad ended up going to jail. And me and my brothers were staying with my mom. Now, I'm not sure where the finances are at, but they couldn't have been good because we were renting a room from in a woman's house. She had like 2 little boys. And she was doing like a co-parenting situation herself. And we were living in the master bedroom, all 4 of us, my mom, me, my 2 younger brothers. And we had our own bathroom and like a closet, but we didn't have any beds. So me and my brothers would sleep, thankfully we're small, on like a little couch that also had like an ottoman at the end. And then my mom would sleep on like the long couch. And we did that for a while until eventually my mom left and went to like a work training. She ended up working for Customs and Border Patrol. And actually, when I was an adult, I actually also worked for Customs and Border Patrol for a time. So that was kind of full circle too, but you'll get more of that later. While she was gone in training, I stayed with my dad and he had an apartment. And that was really just hard. I don't really think that my dad knew how to parent. And he definitely had like a girlfriend who could care less. She would always bring her like snotty nosed little children around at that time. And they'd be in the room for like hours on end. And we would be stuck in the living room and he wouldn't like come out and like feed us at a decent time. So I remember I got in trouble one time because we'd been waiting for like hours for breakfast. And like I went in there and like made eggs and made food for my brothers and they were like really mad. And I was like, you don't feed us. Like we were used to a schedule because my mom was very schedule oriented. So living with him, it was very rough. Like he just clearly didn't know how to parent. And then my mom came back from training. She came back. I remember them getting into an argument there, even at the door. Like she's now carrying a gun at this point, like because of her job. And I remember they were always fighting. Like, in fact, they have fought the entire time I've known them. Even to this day, they could not have a decent conversation, be in the same room with each other, have nothing nice to say about each other. And it is absolutely bonkers, even though they haven't been married since I was literally 5 years old. So at this point, at some point when my mom was away at training, she met my stepdad. And then by the time she came back, her and my stepdad decided to elope and get married. And then we are now moving to San Francisco. Now, one of the things that I think was really detrimental in my childhood was the fact that my parents separated us. I don't, each of them blames the other person. I definitely think it's a messy situation no matter how you cut it, especially knowing what I know now as an adult. But they, no matter how you cut it, they did separate my brothers from me. So my dad took my brothers and they lived with him full time, and I lived with my mom. So when we moved from Fairfield to San Francisco, which was like 2 hours away, now we're not together all the time. We're not going to the same school. I'm only seeing my brothers on the weekends. I'm living with my mom and my stepdad, and my brothers are living with my dad. And that was really hard. I've never actually been separated from my parents before. I mean, from my brothers, and it was just really rough. I was not used to being an only child, and to hear my mom tell it, like she even did daycare when I was younger, so I was used to having kids around a lot instead of, being this like I'm just alone, and I didn't really feel like I fit in at school. No matter what school I kind of went to, I always really like valued my siblings, and it really created a really big rift when we were younger too. Like I just remember like being a very smart child, but also very mischievous. Like I remember one time I like my parents, like back when Lunchable, like people would still get like Lunchables. I went in the fridge and I got like the Lunchables, and I wanted the candy, but I knew I wasn't allowed to get the candy without eating the Lunchable. So I literally like opened the little plastic. I figured out how to open the little plastic, take the candy out, put the plastic back down, put it, and like I didn't even have to take it out of the box. So I just like put the box back away. But when the person, my mom was like, where did all the candy go in the Lunchables? I had eaten like all the candy. And so it was just, I was a very smart child. Maybe a little too smart for my own good. I don't know why I did that. That's like just children. Like, this is why they say foolishness is wrapped up in the heart of a child, because why would you do that? I have no idea. But we did live there for a time. And I remember loving my backyard when we lived in San Francisco because it bore like the most amazing fruit. We had like lemon trees, orange trees, like a grapevine. I think we even had like beans that grew back there. I remember feeling like it was like a secret garden. And then I didn't even know there was a book like that. And I would find out about that later. But it felt like my own little oasis and where I could have like peace because I didn't like school. And I was also dyslexic. So reading was really hard and school didn't come easy to me. So even though I was smart, I didn't really excel the way I wanted to. And I remember like being in like a special class for like reading, which was like a huge turnoff and like made me feel so weird as a kid and being like, I just don't want to be here. So, yeah, it was a really strange time. But I do remember like loving my brother and then just missing them, like wanting to be with them, but not really being able to. And there really wasn't much that I could do. Like I do remember my parents, they were still fighting. Even when my mom got married to my stepdad, my dad would leave these like crazy messages. And it was just hard because I think it created a dynamic to where everyone was just stressed and like the trying to do the drop offs and the pickups, like it was never like a smooth transition. Like even when I had to like visit my dad, it was always something, and then they would be fighting about what happened like from pickup and drop off. And I just wanted my family back, to be honest with you. And that's one of the things that I learned early on as a kid, that just because you really, really want something doesn't mean that you're going to get it. I remember just feeling very lonely and being like, I just want my family. It was no slight to my stepdad, who I felt like was a nice guy. Like he would be around me. Like he taught me how to count in like French because in his line of work, he was going to be working. He did immigration. And so he learned French and he was teaching me French and like counting in Spanish even. And I liked that about him, but I just, as a kid, you don't understand the dynamic. And I just wanted things to be like all right and go back to how they used to be. And they never did. In fact, right after that, all this was going on. Shortly after that, my mom and my stepdad decided to move to Vermont. And so my brothers, because I didn't live with them, were going to be living in California. And I was going to be moving across the country over 3,000 miles away. It felt like a bajillion, to Vermont. And I'll talk more about that in the coming segment. But that was one of the things that God really had to teach me as an adult, was that sometimes the answer is no. We're not always going to understand why the answer is no, but I learned that really early on in my childhood, and that really created a rift between what I felt like I needed in my heart, like as a child, and what I wanted, but what was the reality that I was actually living in. So that's part one of the first few years, and we'll get into what happens next time.